Welcome aboard.
Please welcome to the stage Axios national energy correspondent, Amy Harder.
Hello, and good morning. Wow, look at this crowd. Very impressive. It's so wonderful to be here on this beautiful, sunny, and warm day. I hear that the sun is pretty normal here, so as a Seattleite, I sure appreciate it. I co-author the Axios Future of Energy newsletter. If you're not subscribed, please go sign up now at axios.com. I understand that this might be our first ever Salt Lake City event, and clearly we need to do another one because it's a standing room only. So thank you again for being with us today. We are diving into the future of energy here in Utah, a state where I don't need to tell you, but where policy and innovation and industry are all colliding. So let's get right to it. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Chris Parker, Director of the Utah Division of Public Utilities.
Thanks, Amy.
Chris, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
So you have been at this job for almost 15 years now. Happy early anniversary with your job.
Thank you.
So I'm assuming you've seen a lot of change. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all and 10 being completely, how much has your job changed in the last 2 years?
7.
Oh, and what's causing that 7 in your head?
It's a blend of a couple of things, right? There's 2 major things we've had to grapple with recently, and that is obviously, like everyone else, thinking about load growth due to AI and some of the resource constraints that make it challenging to meet that load growth in a really quick time. And we've been grappling with increased issues related to wildfires in the West and their costs to utilities.
So we're a year into Governor Cox's Operation Gigawatt. Many of you are probably familiar with that. The whole goal is to address these challenges you talk about, to bring more power online for the hottest topic of the day, AI data centers. But that's not the only reason, of course. What challenges are you running into? Specifically, let's kind of get into the weeds of why can't we just bring on more electricity today? Like, what's the holdup?
There's a couple of big ones. Some of them are real resource constraints, and some of them are, I think, social constraints, like permitting challenges that we've suffered a long time in the West. Utah is something like 69% public land. And so just about anything you develop of any scale, you're going to have permitting processes involving the federal government, and those have historically been really cumbersome processes. I think we're starting to see some change around that. Because of some judicial action, as well as a realization that we just have to be better at building things and doing so in a timely manner. And I think that's something that Utah has really excelled at, is being kind of a YIMBY state that likes to build stuff.
Yes, in my backyard, for those not in the know.
Yes, in my backyard. And that's, I think, kind of what's at the heart of Governor Cox's Operation Gigawatt is we're a place to solve problems and build these things and allow growth.
So Utah has one of the lowest electricity rates in the country, which matters a lot because power prices are going up. Is that staying the course despite this load growth? And what are you seeing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think Utah will remain a leader among the states. It's hard to say what our rates will do, right? Resource constraints with supply chains and costs and competition for limited resources, adding all of the transmission and generation we're going to need, those have a cost, a real capital cost. And even when they save on the energy side of the ledger as renewables, you still have to pay the capital cost. So, I mean, I think it's likely we'll continue to see some increases. But I think we'll stay a competitive leader among the states. And I do think if you look historically at rates and adjust them for inflation, we have seen significant rate increases in the last few years. But today, we're cheaper than we were for most of the decade of 2010 to 2020 if you adjust it for inflation.
And what do you think is causing that decrease in prices, inflation adjusted?
Well, I think there's no question that some of the markets in the West and the predominant, maybe not predominance, but in certain periods of the day and year, the predominance of renewable energy allows low-cost resources to fill some gaps. We're starting to strain against the limits of that, and you're seeing delayed retirements of thermal plants as people grapple with what it means to be resource adequate. It used to be you could plan for one peak on one summer month and your system would be good for the whole year. And now there's a greater variability that demands kind of more active management and planning. And I think we're starting to grapple with what that means. So we've been able to, so far, take advantage of those low-cost renewables. And we're kind of at the cusp of having to address some of the challenges that variability has brought on the system. So I think that'll bring some increases, and we're hoping it's moderated in significant measure by the low-cost energy they bring.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit more. You know, in my research for this conversation, I determined from the U.S. Energy Information Administration that solar in the state has grown from 0.1% to 14% between the early 2000s to 2024. That's a humongous growth, and it surprises me, even though I've been covering it for that long. A quick raise of hands for the audience. Who here knows about the levelized cost of energy? Okay, so a few hands, but you know, maybe Chris, you can explain it just to ensure we're all on the same page. And how does that affect? Do you think, number one, is that the right metric as wind and solar, these variable energy sources, are becoming more prevalent on the grid? And how do you think we should adjust it as the penetration goes from 14% to say 30 to 40%?
Yeah, I mean, levelized cost of energy is really a metric that's designed to kind of view over the full life cycle of a plant kind of what that energy is going to cost on average. From a rate making perspective, which we do down where I work, what that does is it smooths things out. But that also creates what we like to call intergenerational inequities, right? If you're front loading capital costs and benefits are coming in greater measure in later years, you can have some disparity in how you pay for it. So, we're trying to figure out the best way to do these things. As we get large loads on, I think our legislature has been clear that they need to kind of pay their own way. And the levelized cost of energy measure sometimes can pose a challenge that way. You end up at least with an implicit sort of risk subsidy from one set of customers to another. And we're trying to figure out ways to not hinder development, but also address some of those issues. And I don't have any brilliant ideas about it yet.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier thermal resources, and coal is still 45% of this state's electricity rate, which is almost double the national average. Natural gas has increased a lot in recent years. First, a question about coal, Chris. I understand, and we're going to maybe get into this a little bit more later, but that coal has actually become more expensive to run. And there's, in fact, a coal mine that's on fire here in the state, underground, that's causing some reliability issues. Can you talk about how you, as a regulator, are handling the challenges with these rising costs of coal?
Yeah, so I mean, what's happened, there's a variety of reasons the costs have increased, right? There's been regulatory pressure on coal for a long time, which has depressed investment in additional production of those resources. It increases the risk on someone who wants to invest in that, and so we've seen less investment, which means we've had lower supply and higher prices. The fire has depressed supply and added to prices. We have some companies in the state that are expanding some of their production of coal. But naturally, that fire and other issues with coal supply have kind of forced an increase in gas generation to backfill that. And we've worked actively with the utility to kind of work on ways to firm up some of their coal supply for a longer period of time, and they've done so. Our legislature has declared that it wants to maintain these thermal resources as long as it can. And so we're hoping that that will give them some certainty in making those investments. But certainly gas is backfilling the need as it arises. And the utility, our main utility here, of course, is Rocky Mountain Power, which is a business unit of Pacific Corp. And they have a very sophisticated sort of dispatch process for their facilities that take into account both operational needs and economic supply. And so they run what makes sense when it makes sense to run it. And in recent years with the coal challenges, it's been less coal, but it remains as a resource that's available to help when the sun starts going down, and we grapple with those variabilities.
So looking farther into the future, geothermal is growing in this state, and there's a lot of pilot projects here. Could that provide a steadier form of renewable energy going out 5-20 years?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about Utah, like I said earlier, we like to build stuff and we're happy to host things here. Wyoming's a state that does a lot of the same. Some of the emerging technologies are far more expensive than what we have in our portfolio. And for now, at least, geothermal is one of those. So I like to think that Utah's really good at building the ecosystem that allows these things to grow and ultimately become more affordable. And then we can take advantage of it on the ratepayer side later when more expensive places that have the headroom to bring on those more cutting edge resources can kind of be first comers on paying for those.
In our final moments together, I want to do a lightning round game of Would You Rather. Are you ready, Chris?
I guess we'll find out.
Would you rather trust AI to forecast the weather or the price of power?
The weather. I don't think it'll succeed, but.
Would you rather live forever in Utah summer or winter?
Oh, summer.
Would you rather forever manage only winter power demand or summer peak season?
Winter here.
See, but that's a conflict there, so you're going to have to resolve that one.
I can work in the winter and play in the summer.
I see that. Yeah. Finally, would you rather change the past or see the future?
I see the future. I don't want to mess with the past. I've seen Back to the Future.
It's a good one. Well, thank you, Chris, for joining Axios in Salt Lake City. And to our audience, don't go anywhere because we have more conversations coming up.
Thank you.
Introducing our View from the Top moderator, Rochelle Carey.
Thank you. Thank you for that. My first time in Utah, and it's a packed room. I know you all came just for me. It really is a pleasure to be here this morning. I did come from Houston, which is really flat, so while I am focused on you all, I literally cannot stop looking at the mountains. They are absolutely gorgeous. So View from the Top seems like the perfect name for this segment. Thank you so much to Shell for being partners in this for the past year and making events like this happen, like these conversations that are happening. We've been to Santa Fe, New Mexico, Washington, D.C., and of course, now here in Salt Lake City. So with a view from the top, let me welcome to the stage Rick Talent, Shell's Executive Vice President of Supply Chain, Contracting, and Procurement. Rick?
Thank you.
Good to see you.
You too.
All right, so Shell, obviously, 100 years being the big boys on the block, right?
Long time.
Major global energy company in the world. Besides continuing to produce traditional oil and gas, what is the company hoping to achieve in the next decade? Big question, I know.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, and great to be back on stage here with Axios, and thanks for this. And I actually came from Houston as well, so we came from two different airports we found out last night, but we both made it in, so fantastic to be here. Shell's ambition is to be the leading energy company in the world, and energy means all forms of energy, not just traditional oil and gas. We do want to keep our oil and gas and our liquids business going for the foreseeable future. We do see demand and customers still wanting to pay for that. But we're also the world's leading LNG business. So we sell more LNG worldwide than any other business in the world. So we're trying to first of all, invest both in those businesses, but also transform our downstream renewable energy business as well. So those are our mobility stations, our lubricants, our refineries and chemical parks. We're also selectively investing in lower carbon solutions. So those are lower carbon fuels, e-mobility, carbon capture and sequestration. So continue to build the new energy of the future that eventually could help replace oil and gas and compete with that for customers as well. So it's a little bit of everything. It's the all-the-above strategy. Back to 100 years in the U.S., the U.S. is Shell's #1 country. So we're in all 50 states. We have 11,000 employees across the U.S. and many different locations. We have 12,000 Shell retail gas stations. So just if you see a Shell Pectin when you go around the U.S., we have 12,000 of those. 600 Jiffy Lube stations. But we also are the leading purchaser of LNG in the U.S. And we're also invested $8 billion in the last couple of years in lower carbon solutions in the U.S. as well. So the U.S. is a major part of Shell's ambition, our strategy, and of course, being the leading energy company in the world, it's going to be a big part of that as well.
When it comes to energy abundance, what are some of the barriers?
There are a lot of barriers.
Yeah.
What I say is that the energy system, the energy industry is a team sport. So everybody has to come together to make it happen. We want energy abundance. We want people to have the energy they need. We want affordable energy. We want reliable energy. We want clean energy. So it takes everybody to do that. So if you think about a team sport, we need government policies, first of all, to incentivize innovation, but also be predictable. So those are tax policies, regulatory policies. That's a big part of it as well. We need communities as well. We are part of the community everywhere we are around the world. And so us partnering with communities to find solutions, that's another area that we continue to drive. But we also need customer choice. So if you think about what customers need, they need clean, affordable, reliable energy, as I said. And so we work with customers to understand what is the demand, what do they need to be able to be successful. So if you think about what are the barriers, it's how does this all come together? How do we create something that's predictable over time? I always tell people when we make investments in facilities, so we just started up for instance, our Shell polymer Monaca plant outside of Pittsburgh. It takes 6-7 years to build a facility like that, but it's a 40-50 year investment. And so to make an investment over that time period, you do need that predictability from a policy perspective to make it work.
Predictability. Oh, goodness. Okay, so Shell is no longer in the refining business on the West Coast. Is that because of you transitioning to all renewable offerings? Why is that?
No, it's not actually. It's again, an all of the above strategy. If you think about Shell in the U.S., we started on the West Coast. So I won't give a long history lesson in Shell in the U.S., but we actually started in 1912 in the Pacific Northwest, opened up our first refinery in the U.S. in Martinez, California in 1915. So this has been our home in the U.S. for many, many years. It's also our largest market for our conventional fuels. So if you think about what we sell in terms of oil, gas, lubricants, but it's also our largest market for lower carbon solutions. To give a great example, here in Salt Lake City, we actually sell sustainable aviation fuel to Delta Airlines. So it's another key market for us. And so we continue to invest in the West. We have, again, 2,000 retail stations or Shell-branded retail stations on the West Coast. We have a significant number of lubricant facilities, but we're also investing in lower carbon solutions. So we just have 3 new industrial refueling stations for hydrogen in California to be able to have big vehicles to transport things from the port in outside Los Angeles to Southern California using hydrogen. And so again, it's a new fuel, something again that we need to work on to see if first of all, the business models work, but also the incentives for companies to invest in hydrogen vehicles. So the West Coast is extremely important. Specifically, when you said refineries, we found that those refineries were best placed with another operator in that case. They can get more value out of it and actually be better for the communities than we have from our global portfolio. And so we exited those a few years ago, but we are still committed to the West Coast of the U.S.
Okay, obviously being with Shell, the history that Shell has, that we tapped into you because of your view from the top. I want your view from the top specifically on energy abundance and what it requires, right? And It requires a stable supply chain,
Yep.
domestic and overseas. As a leader who has a view from the top, how have you seen the ability to create abundance in energy? How have you seen that evolve over the years?
No, it's quite interesting. If you look at the complexity in the energy systems today, they're amazingly complex. So think about oil products being shipped all over the world, boats, trains, automobiles, right? I guess that's a movie as well. But
say that again? Planes,
trains, and automobiles. I think that was a movie one time. But the complexity, it's taken generations to build, right? So the system took many, many years, and Shell, again, has been at the forefront from a big part of that. But you also see what's happening today, disruptions in supply chains, geopolitical tensions, changing of policies up and down.
Lack of predictability.
Lack of predictability. So today's world is much more complex than even yesterday's world when we were building these supply chains. I always give this story about COVID. COVID was an interesting event because it completely disrupted everything we knew about supply chains across the world. And there was no playbook for it. I mean, we all have it on our risk registers and try to understand what happens when you have a global pandemic. But when it happens, there is no playbook. We had negative WTI prices in the US for a couple of days, just to give you an idea of what we had to go through during COVID. But you had COVID, then you had geopolitical tensions, Russia, Ukraine. We had a boat go sideways in the middle of the Suez Canal that stopped shipment through the Suez Canal for many days. So if you think about today's world, you have to be able to be much more resilient. And so the word resilience in supply chains comes up quite a bit as well. And when I talk about supply chains, it's not just a single supply chain in Shell. So people think about iPhones and supply chains and building iPhones, but we have multiple supply chains. We have 46,000 Shell retail gas stations across the world. We sell 500 million cups of coffee every year for Shell. And so a supply chain around coffee. Yeah, I know. You wouldn't think that we're a coffee company, but we sell a lot of coffee. So you go to a Shell cafe, tell me what you think versus maybe a Starbucks someday. But of course, we have the supply chains on that. But then we're also building massive LNG facilities in the west coast of Canada, for instance. And that's a completely different supply chain. And so what I found in being in this role, but also seeing what's happened over the last 5 or 6 years, is you have to be resilient, you have to be flexible, you have to build those relationships with governments, suppliers, customers, again, communities, right? Again, that team sport that all comes together. And you have to be able to be agile, all right? And that was something that's probably not been in our vernacular over the last few generations. So to create that energy abundance, again, you need predictability in terms of policies, you need predictability in supply chains, but we just don't have that today. So now we have to be able to be agile as well.
Okay, I'm going to steal something from Amy. This is an easy one, I promise, okay? A real quick would you rather, and it's very Texas specific. Would you rather beef or pork ribs?
Ooh, I'm a baby back rib person, so I would say that.
Okay, I'll let that slide.
You like that? Okay.
I'll let that slide. All right, Rick, Talent, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Welcoming back to the stage, Amy Harder.
Hello again, everyone. We have a couple more great conversations, so let's get it going. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Senator John Curtis.
Hello, Amy. Good to be with you. Hello.
Great to be you. Great to be
me.
You.
Yes.
Yes, it is great to be you. It is also great that the government is back open. How does it feel?
You would think that would just be something that would happen and it wouldn't be something to celebrate. But thank goodness, after a very, very long time, we are officially paying our employees.
It's not a record that you want to break again, I'm guessing.
It's a terrible thing. It's just, there's nothing good about it.
You have ambition, though, beyond just keeping Congress running. You actually want to pass laws as one would when they go to the Senate. And you have a couple of bills percolating now that are very relevant to the crowd here today. Bipartisan forestry bill that your staff tells me is also kind of a permitting bill.
It is.
We heard from Chris a moment ago about how that's so important coming from the federal level. And you also have a fusion bill. So tell us about those bills. Do you think they're going to pass Congress now that it's open again?
So they're in two kind of different phases. It's Fix Our Forest is the name of the bill, and it is what I would call very mature. We have two Republican sponsors, two Democrat sponsors. It's been through committee, it's been through markup, it's ready to go to the Senate floor. So that's really, really, very close. It came through committee with a clearly bipartisan vote. And so we hope in the next few weeks to get a vote on that. It's tough. It's one of the things about the Senate. We don't vote a lot. It gets into the weeds about our rules. But that
kind of hits your wagon to whatever's passing.
Yeah, that certainly helps. But you're right. There are some provisions in there, particularly dealing with the legal aspect of this, that are transformational and will help with permitting reform. And there's a lot of ties to energy as well with these forest fires. So we're really excited about it. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, and what about fusion? I have a deeper question on that in a moment, but and this is also bipartisan.
It is, and this is what I would say at the beginning of the process, right? It hasn't gone through that whole system. So this one's going to take us a little while, but equally important, and something that we've got to have our eye on as we move to this energy future. We're not going to get there without doing lots and lots of this.
We talked earlier about how Utah has one of the lowest electricity rates in the country. How concerned are you that that could change as load growth from AI data centers and other factors proliferate across the state?
I think we should all be very concerned. And I am pleased with what I would call a little bit of a trend with AI, which is feeling like they got to be responsible for their own energy, if that makes sense, because somehow bifurcating us as consumers of electricity for our homes and things like that. And this AI is really important because the business model of AI can support much higher prices. And so if we put our consumers on that same trajectory, that's really unsustainable for a number of people.
That's really interesting. Can you do one more beat on this idea that electricity prices, hyperscalers like Google, can actually afford these higher prices? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so listen, when you can afford to reopen a nuclear plant and that works with your business model, there's a reason that utilities didn't reopen that. It doesn't work with what people can pay for for utilities. And so clearly the business model around AI, the cost of power is substantial, but it's a piece of their overall puzzle, right? And
a small piece of their overall puzzle.
Yeah,
a big piece to maybe our own electricity bills, but
yeah,
a very
but
big,
from
small one.
Perspective. And so if that goes up in price, it's still profitable for them to do what they want to do. And so if we tie all of our consumers to that same model, they're not game for that, and nor should they be, quite frankly.
Right, and the hyperscalers are in many cases taking that on their own.
Yeah, and that's like I say, that's a trend that I think they're starting to realize, look, if we're going to have power, we cannot depend on the local utility, just from a timing perspective, but also just from a resource perspective for a lot of reasons. They've got to grab this themselves.
So I understand that recent state laws have actually mandated that coal plants stay open for affordability and reliability reasons. But at the same time, we talked earlier with Chris about how coal plants are actually becoming more expensive to operate. And there's a fire underground at a coal mine here in the state, which I'm sure you know about, but I just learned about. Do you think these types of laws mandating coal plants stay open are still necessary if they're increasing costs?
Sometimes I think we overcomplicate this. And what I mean by that is the market is far more powerful than actually government legislation. And the market for some time has been driving three factors that I talk about a lot. It's driving affordability, it's driving reliability, and it's driving cleanliness. And I think if we're honest, Republicans kind of leaned into affordability and reliability and ignored clean. And I think that was a mistake. And I think if we're honest, my Democratic colleagues kind of leaned into clean and abandoned affordable and reliable, and that too has been a mistake. And I really think the market is going to drive this. And so even in coal, it wants that coal to be as clean as possible, right? And right now we're in this environment, quite frankly, where every electron is needed. And I don't think we have the luxury of totally closing off any category, renewables or otherwise, right? And let the market work and let the technology work. We've got carbon sequestration and direct air capture and things like that. And I actually really think in the not too distant future, we'll be using some of these fossil fuels at net zero because the market's demanding that. And innovation is also kicking in as well.
So you've hosted a conservative climate summit here in Utah for 4 years running.
Shocking, right?
I know. Quick raise of hands. Who here knows about the summit or has even attended it? Okay, so we have a pretty informed audience. If you didn't raise your hand,
You all, by the way, make me very happy. Those that didn't raise your hand, we got to talk, but you're invited next year.
You just have to invite them,
Yes,
Senator.
you're all invited.
Yeah. So this is part of the Conservative Climate Caucus that you launched in 2021 as a member of the House. Why do you think that you're out in front on this issue when most Republicans are, in fact, the opposite?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll push back a little bit. I think there are some very loud Republicans that are opposite. I think there's some are extreme, but I think the fact that we're having a conservative climate summit in Utah for 4 years, and anybody that was there know that it was close to standing room only, and we had legislators, and we had policymakers, and we had business people, and we had concerned citizens all coming because they know that deep in, planted in every human being is a desire to leave the earth better than we found it. And I think we have tripped up, not so much in that, but the way that we talk about it. And I think we've put people in a place where they push back because we make them uncomfortable, and we've got to change that narrative. Everybody should feel comfortable in this conversation of leaving the earth better than we found it. It should not be political, right? It should just be something that we strive for. And like I say, I think the market has this figured out and is taking us there actually rather quickly.
So you talk about loud voices, and then the implication is that there's some quiet voices talking about this issue as well. You know, you've been in Congress in various positions for quite some time. I've been covering this beat for almost 20 years now. Republicans have been pretty quiet on this issue for a very long time.
Yeah, that's fair.
What's the
let's
holdup?
first of all, let's go back to the 70s before you were born. I was not, but you know, clean air, clean water, EPA. This was all very much within our wheelhouse as Republicans. And then we went through this period of time where we pushed back. And I think, you know, I don't want to blame anybody, but I think the reality of it is that the environment that was created around this turned Republicans off. It was, you know, quite frankly, an environment of shaming. You can never do enough. No matter how much you do, you're a bad person. It was an environment where you were asked to do impractical things. And it was an environment where we were asked to make sacrifices here in the United States to kill our economy and turn a blind eye to China and India and things like that. And so when that was pushed back, it felt like we were pushing back on leaving the earth better than we found it. And it was really a call or just a plea to have a reasonable conversation. And what I'm really pleased about is I think we're entering that environment. This document from Bill Gates is astounding, right? And I think what you're hearing is, let's be practical. Let's make good decisions. And if we do, it will reduce emissions. It will fuel our economy. Those two don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can be energy dominant in the United States and reduce emissions. And that is a conversation that both Republicans and Democrats should really get excited about and jump into. And I think if we could do that, we'll make this a nonpartisan issue, and we'll make much better decisions.
So the Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, was at your summit a few weeks ago. How can you make progress on some clean energy that we've already talked about this morning, like fusion and geothermal, even when this administration pretty roundly dismisses climate change as a problem?
So here again, the way we talk about things matters. And sure, I would love the administration to talk about this in a different way. And I think if we're honest, we do have a bent right now against wind and solar that is unfortunate coming from the administration. But the other signals are not. You know, nuclear, battery storage, geothermal, right? All of those things are in a really good place. And quite frankly, I think that's one of my jobs is to navigate that dialogue and you know, tamp down, right, the things that are just not right or not realistic. You know, I heard you talking earlier about, you know, how we move forward, and I guess it was with Rick, and I couldn't help but thinking, like, what we say as a government sends signals to the market that matter, and we have to be far more careful So quite frankly, on both sides, if you close down the Keystone Pipeline, of course prices are going to go up even before the impact of that really hits the market because it's sending the signals. If you shut down wind and solar projects, that's sending signals to the market. Investors are going to go to the sidelines. They're uncertain even outside of wind and solar, right, what's going to happen. And I think one of the things that I've got to do and I've got to get the administration to do is just be far more clear about we want to be energy dominant. Every electron matters, and clean matters, affordability matters, reliability matters, and that's what we're going to pursue with a vengeance. And we're going to be the best in the world at it.
So speaking of the world, I understand that you were planning to go to the United Nations climate conference that's underway now in Belém, Brazil, before the government shutdown distracted you, rightly so. To world leaders and others, thousands, tens of thousands of people gathering there now, what's your message to them from America on these topics when you see the comments that some of you may have seen that President Trump, during the UN General Assembly earlier this year, had a pretty long speech that included some interesting comments criticizing their effort on climate change. So what's your message to the world when that's coming from the president?
I think we need to be bolder about bragging about our success. Over the last dozen or even 15 years, the United States has reduced more carbon than the next 10 carbon-reducing countries combined. We should not be ashamed to go and shout from the housetops, right? Like this, we're in and we make a difference, and our innovation and the way we do things is actually doing more for reducing emissions around the world than any of you, all of you combined. And I feel like sometimes we take this apologetic approach. Can we do better? Of course we can be better. Are we making mistakes? Of course we're making mistakes. But we don't need to go with our tail between our legs. And so one of the reasons I've gone over the last, I missed the last 2 years for a couple of reasons, but I've gone to the 3 before, is I want somebody there, from a conservative perspective, giving our suggestions, and I'll give you a really good example why that's important. The first year I went, nuclear was a bad word, right? And I was able to, and I'm not going to say I turned the tide, but I'm one tiny little voice right in there saying, wait a minute, you got to be thinking about nuclear. Well, today it's totally embraced, right, by the world as a clean option. Affordable is working on that issue, but reliable and clean. And when we're not there, right, then we make mistakes. And so I think conservatives and Americans need to be there, and we need to be bold and not apologetic, and at the same time realize and admit the things that we could be doing better. That's, if I were king for a day, that's what I'd go do.
Yeah, the shift on nuclear power at those UN climate talks, I completely agree with you, Senator. It's been a complete 180. It's now a central part of the conversation, in a positive way.
Well, there's no, and this is what the aha moment is, there is no way to get to a clean future without it.
So we are nearing our time together, the end of our time together, Senator. So I do want to pivot to our lightning round.
Okay, so let me be clear. I get to ask questions too?
Oh, only if we have time, but we might run out of time. So.
Okay, all right, yeah. Bring it on. I'm ready.
Okay.
Bring it on.
And you just have to answer with one word or one number. So I'll have to interrupt you if you don't, Senator. But okay. I think you know how to.
For a politician, you know how incredibly hard that is.
Oh, very, very hard. But I'm up for the challenge. Okay. What are the percentage odds of Congress passing any type of permitting reform, including your bill, by the end of the year?
99.9.
Really, by the end of the year?
Well, if you put my bill in there now, but it's overall permit. Oh, I'm going more than one word.
That's okay. What about putting your bill aside? What are the chances of Congress ever passing a big permitting bill?
They are higher than not.
Okay, I'll take it. What are the percentage odds of fusion coming online commercially ever?
Yes.
That wasn't the rules. You have to choose a percent.
A percentage.
0 and 100%.
Is high.
High. Okay, what about by 2030?
Sure. I get one word, right?
Microsoft is actually trying to do this by 2028, so that's a real question.
Yeah.
Okay, final, would you rather?
Okay.
Would you rather live forever in Utah summer or winter?
Oh, this is so easy. Look, the older you get, the more you hate winters in Utah. And even though you love skiing, you can't beat our summers.
Are you going to move to Scottsdale?
Oh, heavens no. No.
Okay, would you rather change the past or see the future?
Oh, it's you got to go for the future.
Okay, well, with that, thank you, Senator,
Thanks, Amy.
for your time
hey,
today.
Thanks to all of you. It's great to be with you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Let's keep the conversation going. Please welcome to the stage our next speaker, Sarah Wright. She's founder and CEO of Utah Clean Energy. Sarah, great to be with you here today. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
So you just announced that you're retiring, leading the organization that you founded, Utah Clean Energy, after 25 years. Congratulations, firstly.
Thank you.
If you had to choose just one, and I realize that might be hard, but we're in the business of smart brevity here at Axios. If you had to choose just one, what's the single biggest thing that changed in Utah energy over the last 25 years?
I would say opening the door to solar development and having it scale.
You know, I wrote an article today in Future of Energy, which, reminder, if you're not signed up, you need to go do so, about how we're actually lowering the emissions of fossil energy. And the timeline that happened over the last 25 years is almost exactly aligned with the growth of solar, which we talked about earlier, 0.1% to 14%. So what was the cause of that? Was it subsidies, the market?
I think in Utah there's multiple factors. Back when PURPA was the way to move projects, and I won't get too wonky, but
PURPA is a very long acronym that we don't necessarily need to say, but.
But anyway, we worked on a case with another developer. We won, they were able to get good capacity payments, and that opened the door to utility scale solar, and then that combined with the declining prices and incentives is what took it to scale.
The AI energy boom we've heard a lot about today already has been one of the last big trends that you're dealing with in this role. What impacts are you seeing on the ground for this rush of power? Is it going to be a net positive for clean energy, or could we see coal staying online longer and a lot of new natural gas being built?
You know, I think there's a lot of decisions that will make that happen, that will lead to what happens in the future, but my hope is because solar storage, maybe combined with a little gas, and as geothermal comes on, that's what will fill that void. There might be a little time when those hyperscalers use fossil fuels, but I hope they don't.
What did you make of the senator's comments? I found them quite interesting about how the hyperscalers can afford to bring on more expensive electricity and maybe could even, in that way, accelerate new technologies like advanced nuclear power and geothermal. Is that a trend that you're also seeing?
Well, I don't know if we're seeing it on the ground yet, but we definitely could. And I think that the fact that geothermal is 24/7 baseload power, and Utah is set to be the first state to have the enhanced geothermal projects where they drill down 1-2 miles. I think once we see that happen the first time, the hyperscalers will go for that.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about geothermal. You know, it's a type of energy that, it's a very small percentage of the overall electricity mix in the US. It's one of the, here in Utah though, it's about 5%, which is bigger than most. How is it, what are its attributes that make it uniquely suited for something like a data center?
Sure, I mean, one thing I will say is that geothermal is kind of the old new kid on the block, because when I started this work in 2001, the only utility scale power plant, renewable power plant, was a 30 megawatt geothermal project. And so geothermal is 24/7 power, and that now they're being able to dispatch it and structure it, so dispatch it so that it can serve the grid in a really great way. Data centers are pretty much base load, flat load 24/7, and so geothermal matches perfectly with that. And if you do geothermal, solar and storage, some wind, not as much wind in Utah, you have a great clean source to provide the data centers. But it's also the same mix for all customers. I mean, there's so much that geothermal, solar, and storage can do in the state.
Do you think on geothermal do you think it's a positive that there's some crossover between more fossil energy. There's a lot of, I think Fervo, the head of Fervo used to work at Shell, for example. Do you think that the expertise you get from these companies can be applied to this clean energy? Now, the addendum here is that we did see that to some extent with, say, offshore wind, but offshore wind is kind of down for the count at the moment, and geothermal seems to be on a positive swing. Do you think that crossover of expertise is ultimately going to help the energy technology, or could it backfire in terms of concerns, local concerns about drilling and fracking, which I understand is also part of geothermal?
I think it's definitely a positive that they're able to take all the advancements that we've made in the oil and gas drilling industry and put them to geothermal. The company Fervo working here, they recognize and they speak about their fracking, but they are also committed to doing it in a safe way. And so, and also the fact that it's being built in, this big new plant is in Utah, a conservative red state, that I think that it's not going to run into the same barriers that offshore wind has run into.
So we've talked about the diversity of energy mix here in Utah, but that coal is still 45%. Now, I will say it came down from something like 75% over the last 15 years. So percent-wise, it's actually been a big decrease. You may have heard Chris and the senator talk about coal, and you actually in our prep call, you helped teach me about coal in the state and how prices are going higher for coal. What do you think should happen with coal in the state? I think we saw the senator kind of inch toward saying, maybe, he was kind of deflecting my question about whether or not we need state laws keeping these plants open. But what do you think should be the path for coal in the coming years?
I think that economics will make the decisions, and the statutes that have passed, the laws that have passed in Utah do have some room for looking at what's in the best interest of ratepayers. And so I think that as we might keep some of these plants open, but as we add more renewables, solar, wind, storage, geothermal, they will need to run less time. And I think we need to gain comfort with how the grid is going to operate as we transition to a cleaner and decarbonize that grid, because I started this work from a climate change perspective, and the economics are with us, the technologies are with us. So as soon as we can, proof of concept that those plants should just go away, and then we have to work with those communities and make sure that those communities that we've built our economy on have the ability to thrive.
You mentioned how you got into this work initially focused on climate change. We heard from Senator Curtis a moment ago about Republicans and climate change and how they approach the issue a little bit differently, and there's been this polarization that I think we're all extremely aware of. Do you think efforts like his are making a tangible difference for somebody who has been at this for a quarter of a century? Sounds so long when you say it that way.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons we've been so successful, Utah Clean Energy, is we really work from a values-based perspective, and Senator Curtis is right there. He'll say, who doesn't want cleaner, more affordable, reliable energy? Who doesn't want to leave the world a better place for their kids and grandkids? So his engagement and bringing other conservatives along is a game changer.
So are you going to be riding off into the sunset after this job? Are you going to be moving to Scottsdale? Are you going to be recommitting to this cause in another way? Can you give us a little sense of what you might be up to?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I won't ride off into the sunset. I will take a break.
But this place has beautiful sunsets.
Yes, they do.
Sky.
Maybe I'll do that for a while, but I'll find my my role so I can help moving climate and clean energy solutions.
So we are nearing our end of our time together, so we know what that means. We are moving to the rapid fire round. Would you rather support advanced nuclear power or fusion?
Advanced nuclear power.
And an addendum, I'm going to break my own rule here, but your organization doesn't really you haven't taken a position on nuclear power, is that correct?
That's correct.
What do you make of the senator's comments about how it's actually becoming a key role in addressing climate change?
I think it's fine, but it's always about 10 years out, and geothermal and the other solutions, and we haven't talked about efficiency yet, but efficiency is a huge, we have an all-electric net zero building. I think that Right now, it's 20% of the US's mix. It will maybe 20% going forward as we retire those plants, but we have other cleaner, cheaper, more readily available solutions at hand.
Okay, back to our regular Would You Rather programming. Would you rather lead a nonprofit 50 years ago or 50 years from now?
50 years from now.
You're rolling the dice on the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you rather live forever on the ski slopes or the Red Rocks?
Red Rocks.
This is definitely a summer crowd that we've had here so far. Would you rather change the past or see the future?
Change the past.
Oh, mixing it up. Well, with that, thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
And now, to close our program today, please put your hands together for our next guest, Utah Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson.
Good morning.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Great to be with you here today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for inviting me.
So you've been able to listen to some of our conversations this morning, and so I'll be wanting to get some of your reaction from those conversations. But first, an audience participation moment. Raise your hand if you've noticed your electricity bill going up in the last few years. Okay, so most hands. Lieutenant Governor, what's your reaction to that? And what are you with the Cox administration doing to lower prices as this electricity growth continues?
Well, we all know that prices are due to supply and demand. There's been a lot more demand lately on energy as we've electrified everything, especially recently as AI has come online. That has really put, these big data centers, it's really put a high demand on energy, which of course has a tendency to increase prices. So what we're doing is we're making sure, first of all, that we're doing everything we can to protect our ratepayers. And we're also investing in a lot of different ways in making sure that we produce more energy.
So we talked a little bit about Operation Gigawatt. It's been about a little bit over a year since your administration announced that. How is it going, and what are some challenges that you've run into?
Well, it's going well. It's kind of an all-hands-on-deck situation when it comes to Operation Gigawatt. You know, Utah has always been a net producer of energy, and it's been a little bit hard for us to recognize that we're kind of running into facing an energy deficit if we don't quickly move. We're in all of the above energy production state. We don't pick and choose favorites. We want anything that's going to be clean and reliable, and we also really need to focus on baseload energy. So we're working to get, we do have coal and natural gas, which is wonderfully reliable baseload energy, dispatchable 24/7, but we're going to be losing about 67% of our baseload energy in the coming years, in the next 20 years.
What's causing that?
Well, it's getting harder to keep coal plants open, right?
Getting more expensive.
Getting more expensive. It's hard for them to get loans. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of challenges there. So 67% of those coming offline, we're only replacing about 16% of it with baseload energy. So we really need to invest in baseload energy. That's why geothermal is so exciting and important. We've got, of course, there's a place for renewables, solar and wind, but we've got to have better battery storage capacity. And of course, nuclear is just a huge part of this. Yeah,
we actually, in our prior conversations, we haven't dipped into battery storage, which is kind of shocking. So thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for bringing that up. We've talked a little bit about nuclear power here, including advanced. I understand that earlier this year, you led a delegation to the United Kingdom, which included Chris Parker, actually one of our other guests, to learn more about advanced nuclear power. What did you learn on that trip? And can you give us a sense of what's underway here in Utah to build some SMRs, small modular reactors, and other types of advanced nuclear power?
Yeah, Utah has always been part of the nuclear pipeline, the supply chain, right? We've got the only processing mill, uranium processing mill in the United States. We've had mining here. We've got Western Zirconium that produces the cladding for nuclear fuel rods. And so we have been part of that pipeline, but we've never actually produced nuclear energy here. We need to. What we learned when we went to the United Kingdom is that we're going to really have to, it's not going to happen by itself. We're going to have to focus, be very intentional. I think we changed some of our strategies based on what we found in the United Kingdom, recognizing that we need to do more. We need to better help with site identification and site preparation for companies. And now we do have companies, several of them, that are looking at places here in Utah to start producing advanced nuclear technology.
You said it won't happen by itself. Are you kind of subtly implying that the federal government needs to do more, whether that's loan guarantees and grants and streamlined permitting? I think we just heard from Senator Curtis and his support. What can people like him do to make it easier?
We need all of that. What I mean by it's not going to happen by itself is it's so expensive at first that the market's not going to just do it on its own. Like, government's going to have to make some investments, we're going to have to work with the federal government on permitting, on some of these investments, on regulations, especially with the small modular reactors. These are not like the big gigawatt facilities that the Homer Simpson thing. It's not that. It's not a bespoke gigawatt facility. These small modular reactors, you can build a lot of them and they can be the same. But the first one or two are expensive. And then after that, you scale it, but we need to make sure that we're working with our regulators, state and federal regulators, maybe even internationally, having a cohort of regulators that if a SMR is produced in the United Kingdom, can we also get it to be permitted here in the United States? Or is there some sharing of standards?
And speaking of cost, there's a lot of concerns and challenges with nuclear power over the last 20 years. Cost is a big one. Lingering concerns about safety are certainly another big one. I think The Simpsons did no favors to the nuclear energy industry. Pop culture has a huge impact on society's views on so many things. But one interesting comment to bring into this conversation, what Senator Curtis said about the potential for AI companies and primarily the hyperscalers. They're reopening nuclear power plants. And I understand TerraPower is looking at an advanced nuclear energy company, is looking at a site here in Utah. I spoke recently with the head of TerraPower, Chris Levesque, at another Axios live event, in fact, where he said every single one of his deals here in the United States is tied to AI. So do you think that the AI industry can kind of bootstrap these more expensive technologies and shield the people in this room from these higher costs?
100%, yes, definitely. And the challenge with the AI and the real heavy users is, what does that put on our demand, right? It increases prices for everybody. So having the ability to produce electricity off-grid for some of these big, heavy users is a really good idea. And then, they can help fund those first ones and lower the price for the next.
So it sounds like a great idea. What we heard from Sarah earlier, that it's something we're talking about, but it hasn't really happened yet. So my question for you is do you think there needs to be a law, either a state law or a federal law, to mandate these companies do this? Because in my conversations off the record with these hyperscalers, they don't love the fact that there's this target on them for increasing prices.
Of course not.
Yeah, so do you think there needs to be a law that mandates some of this?
I'll leave that to the lawmakers. I used to be one here in Utah. I'm not anymore, so maybe, who knows?
Well, it's certainly an interesting one that I will be following closely. I wanted to shift to coal. We've talked earlier that the state law, speaking of laws, that the state passed a law recently that was mandating keeping some coal plants open for reliability and affordability reasons. A question I asked the senator that I'll ask you as well: do you think those types of laws are necessary anymore when coal is actually becoming more expensive to operate?
Well, I mean, our state certainly thought they were necessary, otherwise it wouldn't have passed and the governor wouldn't have signed it. So we can't reduce our baseload energy before we're ready with other baseload energy to replace it. And I think that's the big concern. I think it's not healthy or not good to say we don't like solar and we don't like wind and we don't want to focus on those, we want to focus on these others. I think we need to focus on everything right now. And while there's a gap between dispatchable energy between coal, getting our geothermal up and going, and nuclear up and going, I think we really need to make sure that we're focusing on everything, but that we're also not offloading dispatchable energy too soon.
You know, that's a really good point because, you know, we say 45% of the state's electricity is still coal, but as I noted earlier, that's actually down from 75% over the last 15, 20, 25 years, which is a huge decrease. So we're sort of in the middle of this slide of coal going down. How do you see the electricity mix? Like if you could have a crystal ball and predict what the electricity mix might be in another 25 years, say after Sarah's predecessor retires in another 25 years, what would be sort of the ideal electricity mix?
Well, I don't know about percentages, but certainly a lot more geothermal and definitely a lot of nuclear.
So let's talk a little bit more about geothermal, because I know there's a lot of folks in the audience that are interested in that topic. And we heard from both Sarah and the senator about its importance. What is the state administration doing to help incentivize this technology, or does it need incentives?
Yeah, I mean, it has needed some incentives. We've got the Forge project that's being helped out by the federal government. It's incredible technology. We've signed a memorandum of understanding with Iceland. We're working with lots of different, on a kind of subnational levels, working with other countries on these technologies to make sure that we're not only sharing what we've learned, but we're learning from others that have tapped into these resources as well. I think geothermal is just a really exciting development. Our advanced and enhanced geothermal technologies that we're deploying here in Utah are, I think, the way of the future for us.
So I want to ask about natural gas. So now natural gas is one of the big reasons actually that US greenhouse gas emissions have gone down in recent years, because it's so much cleaner than coal. But it is still a fossil fuel, and its primary component is methane, so it's also a contributor to climate change over the long term. From an affordability perspective, it's been recently more affordable, but it's very volatile. So you, Lieutenant Governor, how do you see natural gas filling some of these baseload power needs while also shielding consumers, not only from the emissions impact with methane, but also the volatility in prices?
Well, I think natural gas is a really important component of our energy portfolio right now. I don't see that diminishing anytime soon. Like I said, we're not an either or, we're a more. We're just more of everything right now. And I think when we get these other clean, dispatchable energy sources really moving, markets will be able to equalize out, which energy sources are good, which ones are cheaper and cleaner. And I think the market will identify those cleaner energy sources eventually as the cheaper ones that people want to use.
My prep for this, for these conversations, people really did tell me, Utah has it all, and we're a pretty pragmatic state, is what I heard while I was preparing for this. Lieutenant Governor, I would love for you to reflect on what Senator Curtis said about his efforts to engage fellow conservatives on climate change. How does climate change come up in your conversations with constituents, and do you see sort of a unique pragmatism here in this state?
I think the unique pragmatism of Utah is, there's a kind of a knee-jerk reaction that either side will have to certain words or phrases, right? But we all agree that we want to protect our environment for the future, that we want to breathe clean air, we want clean water, we don't want to waste our resources. I think part of the problem that I've heard Senator Curtis articulate so well is that too often certain terms have become politicized to achieve certain particular policy objectives that might be distasteful to the other side, right? Instead of it being pragmatic, it's political. And I think when conservatives hear the word climate change, sometimes they think scarcity, and I'm going to be told that I can't drive a car, and that I have to keep my house cold in the winter and hot in the summer, and that scarcity mindset is what comes to mind, unfortunately. And I think what Senator Curtis is doing so well is helping everybody understand that we can have an attitude of abundance. We can say we're going to have more clean energy, and in the meantime, this helps our environment, and it helps make sure that our environment is protected for the future. We all want these things, conservatives, Democrats, everybody wants these things, but we just talk about them in different ways.
In our final moments together, we are now pivoting to what is our final lightning round. Are you ready, Lieutenant Governor?
I don't know.
Okay. You might see some ones from the prior conversations, but not all of them are the same because we want to keep things interesting around here. So, would you rather spend a day in a data center or an underground coal mine?
Oh my gosh, a coal mine, 100%.
It's a fast. I've been in an underground coal mine. Nothing has ever impacted me.
I've been in both. Data centers are boring. Who would want to spend a day in a data center?
Let's see, point one for coal mines. Would you rather trust AI to run the government or financial markets?
Pass.
I mean, it would have probably kept the government open if it was AI. So, would you rather live forever in Utah summer or winter?
Summer.
Oh, there it goes again. Would you rather change the past or see the future?
Future.
Well, with that, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for your conversation. And thank you, all of you, for joining us. Until next time.